Jack, where are you? Are you in the U.S.?
I'm in Minnesota. I'm getting ready to go in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now, to Columbia, about 10 weeks. So I'm excited about that. Uh, I just this week had a chance to meet with a friend of mine, Jim Cohn, who introduced me to the idea of buying whole bean coffee and grounding it, single origin coffee, and grinding it at home
Mm-hmm.
in 1980. And that was a couple of years after he opened his shop. He's now 86, still roasting, and had some interesting comments. He's really having trouble getting coffee.
Mm-hmm.
He uh, he has suppliers that uh, want to be paid in advance and are saying, I might get you the coffee in 45 days, but no guaranteed. And so it's a stressful time for roasters, especially small and medium roasters here in the States. Uh, Thought that was interesting. But Jim's a treasure, and it was just great to visit with him.
So, are you going to smuggle him back some coffee in your suitcase?
Well, it's a possibility. We can. I think I've got a good, uh, a better way to ship like 20-kilo boxes. It turns out that shipping from Caicedonia in the north of Valle is almost half the price of shipping out of Pasto. And
Mm-hmm.
so uh, that's a possibility. And, it's affordable to ship FedEx if you're shipping, you know, really good coffees. So that's a possibility.
Awesome. Well, if you get some, then you're going to have to send us some because we really missed your coffee.
Well, you're on. Can you post pictures in chat, or how does that work on Discord?
Yeah, yeah, you're able to post
We
pictures.
just had a. I'll post a couple of pictures. We had a beautiful flowering about maybe it was 10 days ago. I got pictures from Mamo, and so looking very forward to the next harvest. And I don't uh, will send y'all some.
Awesome. Actually, we do have a question in the chat. So, Jack, I'll give you a chance to share your beautiful flowering pictures. Um, but we have, okay, Yuyutsu? If you would like to ask your question yourself, you're welcome to, or I can read it out loud and then we can chat about it. Um,
Hi, Lucia. Yeah, I can say it.
awesome.
Hello.
Hi.
Uh, yes, my name is Yutsu. I'm from Nepal, and I'm going to be processing for the first time this year. And yeah, I've been watching your podcast, and since you said some processes are more favorable than others in a certain microclimate, what process or drying practices would you recommend for like around 1400 meters near Kathmandu, which is mid hilly? Sorry, I don't know the specific temps, but the relative humidity is lower than monsoon, and monsoon has already stopped.
Okay. So when I think about processing, I always think about what would be easiest for you to do. So I try to design around um, the conditions that you already have so that you're not fighting the elements because processing and being consistent is already hard enough. So if you like for example a natural sounds like it would be very challenging for you because you have high humidity and potentially that colder weather could take longer to dry, so you don't want to necessarily go towards something where you're constantly fighting the environment unless you can invest in isolating your mill or you have like a closed drying room. So it's not that you can't do certain things. So it's looking at what you have an abundance of. So for example, the facility where you're going to be processing is a facility outside. Is it very exposed, or is it something that is more enclosed that you could maybe temperature isolate?
Uh, 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 I have both options actually in the mill I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to.
So
Yeah.
describe a little bit more what those are and like what is you're saying this is your first time processing, but what is there that you're already doing?
Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to be picking cherries and then like a process that's good for me. I wanted to make washed,
Hmm.
but yeah. So I'm going to someone else's mill. I'm just like an intern of sorts, and they have like African raised beds that you can take out to the sun or keep it inside in a dark room. We have both options. Yes.
Okay, so you can do some naturals then because you have the raised beds already and you're going to be transporting the cherry to a different location. So you don't necessarily have to process where they're picked. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and then how far is that? How much of a transportation time do you have?
Oh, no transportation. Same place. Same farm and then mill right next to each other.
Okay. And the other thing that I do is if there's not a problem, I don't know, it's like don't fix it if it's not a problem. So if you can process that way, then there may not necessarily be something different that you need to do because if it's the first time, you don't really know your baseline, right? Like you could be doing the easiest thing and have really good coffee. So I think that talking about what would be a simple way for you to process and continuing to like at least have do you have a way to cup your coffee there or to send it out to somebody to see how it tastes?
Oh, I can cop myself. Yeah.
Cup. Okay. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the chat. So Pranoy is saying Nima and team at Lekali does different processes and doesn't seem to have issues, but depends on the climate entirely. So I don't know Nima and team. Is that a familiar concept
Yeah,
for
I've
you?
done an internship with them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So tell
Yeah.
us more about what you learned there. Hey Pranoy, good to see you.
Guys as well. So I'll let him go and then I'll jump in after.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't talk about processing. I just did roasting there, but and some copying. But I can ask him because I know him well.
Cool. Pranoy, I'll let
Yeah,
you
I'd
jump
say
in.
it's Nima for me is the best. I mean, he's one of the few people I think who are doing change like revolutionary things in Asian and South Asian coffees, and some of the best coffees I've had are from his farm, and probably a similar. I don't know the exact altitude, but probably similar. And I went there and I processed coffee with him 2 or 3 years ago, and I think what he was probably scared of or more concerned about was at the start and the end of the season, the climate's so different. I think the rains come at a different time, and I remember when I was there, he was worried about frost, overnight frost, and so they used to actually have these little metal or I guess steel drums which they would light on fire to stop frost forming in certain blocks. And so, but also knowing the Nepali industry, I think, I mean, again, it's been 2 years, I think, but my friends over there, I think everyone loves, are still love funky coffees. And so I think there's a spectrum of things that possibly could be done. So I think there's a lot of freedom to, yeah, try new stuff out. At least, yeah, that's my take on it.
Oh, oh
That's
yes.
great.
I want something that's yeah, immaculate, immaculate.
Cool. So I think what we can kind of like deduce is that you can really do anything that you want. Washed helps you have a cleaner coffee if you want kind of more of that standard profile. And what Pranoy I think we can incorporate is depending on your climate, be ready to have different processes, be ready to do different things in response to the ripeness of your fruit, the again your humidity, like other conditions, so that you can I'm trying to say like so that you can respond to different circumstances. So maybe have two or three different processes that you are or like three different protocols, not processes. They can all be washed, but you can potentially reduce your fermentation time, or you may need to extend it if it's incredibly cold and it's taking longer for the mucilage to come off. Or at the end of the season, maybe if you're reusing your same tanks, depending on your tank material, a lot of people see their fermentation time decrease because you just have a bigger buildup. You have more of a microbial charge, and they're able to remove that mucilage really quickly. So that's something that you're going to kind of have to find out over time if you are not inoculating. And this is what we talk a lot about here and on the podcast also, is the inoculating with commercial microbes kind of takes that guesswork out of it. Again, you can do all of this stuff, with your local microbes. It just takes you more time learning one season to the next season and just collecting that data. But if you want to start out the gate, having control, having some access to some microbes can kind of cut that learning in half. Yeah, Dylan, come on in. What's your comment?
Just on the drying side, probably one of the best learnings is to get hold of a temperature and humidity meter from as early as possible, to keep track of your environment during drying. It's a helpful tool to see when things speed up or slow down. What is the factor in your specific environment?
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you. No. So I think the most important point is you're going to need to be taking a lot of data. So tracking as many things as you can, and even just a notebook and taking notes, just noting down how the weather is that day, like just taking notes of the condition of the cherries coming in, writing down whatever you can observe that later will help you in the season. Like you don't necessarily know what's going to be helpful until you kind of go through your first season, cup your coffees, and then go back and say, wow, this lot was really good. What happened that day? Go back in your diary and say, oh, that cherry arrived later than usual, and maybe we were able to process it right away instead of maybe another lot where something happened. You had to wait a couple of hours or kind of process it the next day. So tracking, just general taking notes on what's going on around you will help you more than you think. But you can get a pretty simple, this is a temperature and humidity little monitor, $10.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So something like this that will give you an idea of what's going on in the environment, and tracking that, just having a log of morning, afternoon, kind of overnight temperatures. Did we freeze? Is that us? No. Okay. And something that we talk about here too is when you're drying, you want to know what the temperature and humidity is of the environment, but you also want to know what your coffee is doing. And so being able to have a temperature gun with like one of those laser guns that you can get the surface temperature of the coffee can be really helpful. And I also like to go one step further sometimes and like pile up the coffee and get the kind of the temperature of the pile of coffee, the bean pile. So not just the surface, but also the inside. So all of those tools are pretty inexpensive. $10, $20 for a thermometer. I think the temperature guns might be maybe $25.
Yep.
So those tools and just knowing what your temperatures are will help you tweak it. Because right now, you're kind of asking a little bit of an impossible question. You're saying, how do I optimize for my first time? But we can't optimize if we don't have a baseline. We don't know what your conditions are and what kind of your challenges are going to be. Lowell just had a comment. Yeah, thank you, Lowell, for reminding me. I really recommend taking as many videos as you can when you're processing, because if you're not able to, write down things immediately, having a video of it gives you the time stamp. So okay, this was at 2 p.m. And even just like a little voice note to remind you of what was happening when you don't have your notebook with you. And just taking pictures, you can get a lot of information. Like a lot of times Nick and I have a question about a certain lot and we're like, what coffee was on the patio? And we look at that date and we took a picture of the patio and we know, we had 5 lots there. And it's like, it's something that we didn't write down anywhere, but we had a picture of it. So that is really helpful in tracking. So a notebook, like a diary, just like what you did, as many videos as you can, and anything to know your temperatures, and if you have a humidity meter for your green coffee, or for your parchment as it's drying, do you have access to that, or maybe some of your neighbors or somebody else, so that you can see your humidity as it's going down?
I haven't heard of anyone yet, but like the best processes I know in Nepal, his Nima is one, Pranit Gurung is another one. They don't seem to have one.
So are they just doing the bite test, like they're biting the coffee to see how dry it is?
Oh no, moisture meter, yes.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Is there a different humidity meter?
No, moisture meter, humidity, sorry. Moisture meter is what I meant.
Oh, okay, same thing. Okay, okay. Yeah, we have that. That one is easy. Yeah,
Okay, great. So that's a great
yeah.
start, is knowing how long it's taking you to dry your coffee. Another question that could help us is knowing, what is your water situation? Is your water coming from a spring? Is it coming from where?
Uh, uh, we don't have a water. Oh, actually, I'm not sure. I still have to ask. I think it's from the river, like spring water.
Okay. And so if you want to do washed coffees, it's going to be that your water source can be a big factor in terms of your potential contamination, or just competition with your coffee. So again, microbes, depending on where in the river you may be positioned. If you're downstream from something, the quality of the water can really impact your results. So that's a really big unknown that you're going to have to consider when you're doing your wash process. So it can be, the obvious thing is to say wash coffees give us cleaner coffee versus a natural that can develop more funky flavors. But if you're using river water and you're really downstream from, other people who are using the river to wash their clothes and to do other processes, the wash coffee may not be the cleanest expression. Maybe you would be better off doing a really, strong selection in your cherries and trying to do a natural that way. So keep in mind the quality of your water as you do your experiments.
Can you float before doing a natural?
Yeah,
Like after picking? You can.
absolutely
Okay.
recommend.
Yeah.
Absolutely recommend to float the coffee, because the important part in your natural, to get that cleaner version of the natural, if you're definitely trying to avoid funky, boozy naturals, is uniformity. You want to be able to get rid of those really light, overripe cherries that are going to have much more of the microbial, much more of those yeast and bacteria that could lean towards that booziness. So if you're doing that float step and reducing that influence, you could get a cleaner coffee. But again, remember, it matters on the source of your water. So if you're using water that is heavily charged, or that, again, is really downriver from something else, some factory up the river that's doing something, then you're inoculating as you're floating. So you're benefiting the coffee because you're removing this inconsistency. You're removing the overripe cherries, but you're also bathing it with unknown water. So it could absolutely not be a problem at all, but we just don't know what your water's doing. So something to
Perfect.
keep in mind.
Thank you so much, Lucia.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
let's see. When are you going to start processing?
Um, uh, when I think they will start ripening in about 15 days.
Oh, very
So,
soon.
yeah, understood. Start, yes.
Okay. So you have time to come back and tell us how it went. Because I think once you get started, once you can kind of see the reality, like the size of your batches, I think that's another thing that can kind of dictate what process you want to do, is how much coffee do you have to process. So if naturals make sense, can be really easy if you have smaller batches that you can mix well and get good airflow. But as you start getting bigger and bigger and bigger quantities, you may not have enough space. You may have to move over to wash coffees, because that gives you, more space on your drying patios. So that's going to be a factor as well, is the volumes that you're trying to get through your facility. So I think a lot of times you want to say, I'm looking for a certain flavor profile, or you really want to do things with flavor in mind. but then you have the reality of, okay, I just don't have the space for it, or this temperature just doesn't work for this thing that I want to do. So kind of bringing back that reality. So it could be that in the beginning of the season, maybe you do a few more naturals because your drying beds aren't full yet. You have a little bit more space, a little bit more breathing room, and then you switch in the peak to wash coffees because now you have to like hurry up and kind of get going. Or it could be the other way. You could get hit really hard in the beginning where all the fruit is ready at once and you don't have enough space. And then maybe in the middle of the season, you get a little breather and then you can do a natural and kind of balance it that way. So I think before we can optimize your best process, we just need a lot more information about your constraints and your baseline. And the biggest constraints are going to be space. How much space do you have in your tanks? How much space do you have in your drying area? And then also the quality of your water. Because if you have really great water and it's not a problem, go for washed. But if water's inconsistent, maybe some days you have a lot of water and other times the well runs drier and you don't have water, and then that lack of consistency maybe pushes you in a different processing direction where you don't depend on water so much.
Yep.
Yeah. And keep coming back here.
Yeah.
And keep coming back here and let us know how it's going, because as you can see in the chat, you can share pictures, and we have so many people that can give you their advice too, and can give you some guidance on what's worked for them or things that, you know, maybe we don't all think of at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Lucia. I will go try this out.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope
Yeah,
we're
bye.
check in with you in 15 days.
Oh, no, not. I actually don't know when I'm going and coming back, so I
Okay.
will come back, but not sure when. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I think as we actually have coffee on the patio right now. We started in Guatemala 3 weeks earlier than we did last year. It's not coffee that we're actively processing. It's kind of the first, here they call it panaleo. So it's like the first couple of ripening cherries that they get off of the tree to kind of encourage the main harvest. So we've gotten, it's a good amount of coffee. 300, it was 30 quintales that one day. How much would you say? Yeah, I've gotten like 2,000 pounds of cherry this last week, and it's really kind of itchy to see the patio with dried coffee already. I think they're already picking it up. We've already brought in some cherry, processed it, dried it, and it's getting put in the bodega. Our current temperature and humidity readings, sorry, I'm reading Dylan's question on the chat. The current temperature and humidity readings on the patio throughout the day. So we should still be, it's November, we should still be in our wet season, in our rainy season. So our humidity is pretty high. Most of the day I'm seeing it at like 66. In the mornings it's like 70, but we don't have active rain right now. So this is also really different from last year in that a year ago it was still raining. We still had a lot of moisture in the ground. And for the last, I want to say like 10 days, we haven't had any rain, which is really, really strange. What we have here is like a wet season and a dry season. And there's no like a spring where things kind of taper off or kind of build up. It's like someone turns on the faucet and it's pouring rain, and then they turn the faucet off and nothing. The temperatures that we're seeing is, it's still not that hot. So we're at 22. Yeah, I think for like an hour or two in the peak heat of the day, maybe we can get up to 28, but it's a very short window from maybe like noon to 1 or 2 p.m. It's about 28, but otherwise the days have been hovering around 20 Celsius, and overnight it gets down to 14 Celsius. So overnight it's pretty cold, and what we have here also is because of that large temperature differential, we get a lot of dew. So the coffee wakes up pretty humid. Like you can see visual like looks like it rained on the coffee, but it's just that condensation from the really cold night kind of heating up. Flint has a comment. Lucia, if you haven't already told the group, I would be keen to hear about the challenges and adjustments you're making for larger lots this year. Aren't y'all handling quite a lot more coffee compared to last year? Yes, Flint, we are, and I haven't updated the group. So we are 3xing our production this year. We're actually going to try to do more if we can, because because if we can sell more coffee, we want to sell more coffee. The limiting factor is we have our concrete patios and there's no mechanical dryers and no more really space to go. Where the mill is located is pretty steep. We would have to really truck the coffee to a completely different location to try and get any more physical drying space. So our drying is constrained, and not just the physical patio, but we dry with shade. So it's been challenging to get enough shade over our section of patio. I think I'll have, it's been in the chat before, but I'll have Nick share a picture of our patio where we only have, I would say like a third of it under shade that is retractable. So we can pull the shade out if it's too hot, and then we can retract it if we don't need it. Because what we found sometimes is that the shade was too thick too thick. The shade cloth was at 80% reduction of light. So it would cool down the coffee a lot, and the coffee was drying unnecessarily slowly, and I really needed the patio space. So the shade was actually kind of working against us because it was too shady. So we're changing our cloth to be 60% instead of 80% to give us a little bit more wiggle room. And I'm hoping that will be less labor, because what we found was we were taking the shade out, and then it would drop the temperature too much. My coffee was at like 25 Celsius when I could be up at 30. So it was at 25. I was taking a couple extra days. So then we were constantly, retracting it. It would get too hot. We would take the shade out again. So it gave us that flexibility to control temperature, but it was just too much effort. It was kind of annoying. So if we change the shade cloth to be more permeable, I think it won't drop the temperature so much, so we won't be having to retract it so much back and forth. So that's been a pretty significant investment. So Pranoy is saying we're harvesting this week as well, and I think I've reached a point where a mechanical dryer is something we really need here. Is this something you've considered at all? I wish. I really, really want a mechanical dryer. And what's frustrating is that this farm used to have mechanical dryers, but the owner had a bad experience with them. I think they burned the coffee, they got bad comments, and now he has it in his head that mechanical dryers ruin coffee, and he's just like, no, I can't forever. And so I haven't seen them. There's some part here where I think they're just like mechanical dryer carcasses rusting somewhere, unfortunately. So the challenge is we don't own the farm, so it's not our investment to make. And the owners have had such a bad experience that it's just like he's been burnt off from using mechanical dryers. But I personally really recommend them. I just want to say in the chat, Nick has shared a picture of our wide open space patio, and you can see we have 4 panels of shade on there. And so this week we met with, it's a little late, but this week we met with the contractor to put 6 more rows of what we have, so that we can get that whole area, and hopefully, Oh, Dylan? Did you want to say something?
Sorry, I turned my chat on bump stack.
Okay. Well, you did ask a question that I didn't answer on the chat, which says, how deep do I allow the coffee to be on the patio? So so far, we haven't needed to make it that thick. I don't know what that is, like
2 inches.
2 inches for the space that we have. I think that's definitely going to be a big change this year, is I'm going to have to make much thicker piles to make it all fit. I wanted to say the thickness. Oh, so with that thickness, I'm drying the coffee in 11 days, 11, 12 days with shade. So, yeah. I want to let Pranoy jump in. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, a couple things. And actually, I think Paolo's graphic made me think of something else as well. Yeah, I think the potential of having a harvest which is 30 days shorter than it is something that I really like. And if I can dry coffee in a couple of days without harming its structure too much, and keeping, maybe in some cases even improving it, that would be great. I think yeah, it's just getting hard with, and I'm only 4 days in, and I'm thinking about what I can do better next season. Um, but I'd like to. I've actually got a friend who lives about an hour away. It's a bit tough to get to, but he's got a dryer. It's not completely controlled. There's no. I mean, there's sensors for temperature, but I feel like, yeah, I don't know, but I might maybe try maybe a small to medium sized wash lot just to see. Yeah, half of it dried on the patio, half of it in his dryer cup. Compare. I also want to look at it under UV because I feel like, for example, our pulper, even we've got an old school pulper, and that's another thing that needs an upgrade, but we look after it. And so, yeah, a few comments that I get from a few roasters, different parts of the world, is it's not chipped, but there's a kind of like a scraping that you can see only under UV, and obviously some layer, microscopic almost, is damaged or almost damaged, and so
Do you have
yeah,
a
that's
disc
one. And
pulper?
yeah, we do. It's a solid old one, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I think it's actually from Kenya, way back. It's like, I don't know how many years old, but fabricated in different parts from different mechanics and things like that. And but it's good. It's solid. We can pump a couple tons of coffee out in, yeah, in about an hour. And yeah, the other thing I'm curious about is by picking a bit early, about a month earlier than we did last year. But I kind of don't mind because all the forecasts are not looking too good for December, and so I'd rather get a head start and then just run with it. And so, yeah, the graphic. I'm really curious to try and play with ethylene. I've been playing with ethylene for my avocados, and yeah, it's just for ripening. And I had a few events with chefs, another part of what I do. I had to get these avocados ripened in time and right on time, and so I got these ethylene bags, which puff up full of gas. It's a completely natural gas, and yeah, I'm really curious about that. I don't think, and yeah, I don't think it'll be as consistent, and maybe like any other fruit. I think of like ethylene ripened bananas, which we get a lot of, unfortunately, in India now, and they look amazing, but then when you take a bite out of it, it's like raw,
Yeah.
and it's the sugars haven't been unlocked and they haven't developed. So yeah, I'd like to try that out. And so, yeah, I don't know if anyone's tried that before or done that. I'm sure someone has, of course, but yeah, that's where my head is at the moment.
That was going to be my warning. Okay, wait, let's go back to mechanical dryers and then we'll talk about the ripeness chart that Paolo shared in the chat. Like you said, the key, and we know so much more now about seed kind of integrity, like the physical integrity. So we know what causes damage a lot more. And it tends to be not just high temperatures, because of course high temperatures will kind of create damage and burst the structure, but also the rate of drying. So even if you do gentle drying where you don't reach those peak temperatures, but it's still too fast, you're pulling that water too quickly out of the seed, you can still create damage that way. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm never hitting those high temperatures, but even still, it could be drying, too fast. So What we were able to do is in Colombia when we processed, we did have access to a mechanical dryer. And what's wonderful about those is not only do you have the speed because you can run them 24 hours a day, which is what people were doing. That's what we don't want. And I know Prannoy knows this. I'm just kind of saying this for the group and for any replays later, is that we want to have that natural night rest. So the recommendation, if you have a mechanical dryer, is you can still run it continuously, just run it continuously with different coffee. So, put in one coffee, give it that 8 to 10 hours of drying, pull that coffee out, put another batch in there. And so you can get the efficiency of running your machine all the time and drying multiple coffees, but you're giving each coffee that night time. You're simulating natural drying as a nighttime, giving it a rest. So in a way, yes, it's more work because you have to load and unload the machine more frequently, but you're saving yourself the labor that you would have on raised beds of constantly mixing the coffee because your machine is, I'm thinking about a guardiola, so the rotating drum, so that you have airflow and mixing. So being able to kind of split it up that way can help you use the technology, have efficiency, but not cause that damage, and making sure you're giving your coffee some rest. I'm seeing. So let me go back to the chart that Paolo put on the screen. So I'm making that a little bit bigger right now. So we're talking about ripeness and seeing, super green cherries, a little bit more colored, some yellowy orange, then you get the red, and then you get the really purple and overripe cherries. And this question was, when you say that certain processes, it's better to have cherries with uneven ripeness, which specific process are you referring to? In some cases, such as highly processed coffees or Colombian competition lots, producers usually aim for very uniform ripeness to optimize sugars and consistencies. So this is true, and this has been a good advice in general, is if you have even ripening, you'll have better results. But I think that one of the things that I talk about that I've seen is that when the cherries are so uniform, and it was really mostly about the trend of going for high bricks and trying to, reach those really high numbers of 20, 25 bricks. Then when you are maximizing your sugars and trying to have so much of that sugar available for like long fermentations, then what you're sacrificing is acidity. So all of, in the really green cherries that you see in the top of the chart, that's a lot of acid. And that acid, those carbon molecules get converted of the carbon of acid to the carbon of sugar. So as you're getting more sugar, you're also reducing the acidity. And you do still want some acidity so that you have longevity and structure and like life to your coffee. So what happened when the trend is just to get all like purple, evenly, perfectly purple coffee cherries with really high bricks, is that you're missing the freshness and the longevity of that coffee. A lot of times that coffee can be really fruity, but it tastes kind of flat. And so it's like that bell curve. It's like some of the coffee's improved, but then they tend to fall off. So for natural processes, I still recommend you want uniformity. You want to have, that's why earlier in the conversation we were talking about floating your cherries, because you do want to be able to get that uniformity. And then if you can do visual selection, like hand picking and getting more of the green cherries out of your naturals, that will really help that process, because the natural is already so variable that whatever you can do to get that uniform starting mass, that will help the quality. Which is why I like to work more with washed coffees, because with washed coffees, because we're removing that exocarp, we're removing the outer layer, and we're fermenting that mucilage, you have more wiggle room, you have more like of a buffer to include those less ripe cherries and kind of even it out during the fermentation process, where you can, because we know in our fermentation process, you're creating flavor, and that flavor in the liquid, in the fermentation, has to diffuse into the seed. So you can kind of compensate for some of those lacking. So some of those like orangey kind of middle ripe cherries can absorb some of those flavors that the super ripe cherries have. Whereas when you're doing a natural process, everything is in its own little bioreactor, its own little cherry container. So you don't have as much room to homogenize the whole lot. So if you are in a situation where you don't have enough labor to do the really selective picking that you wish you could, or if you have a variety that doesn't ripen as evenly, so you tend to have a little bit more of a mix, then washed coffee can be your friend, because that, those more underripe cherries actually help you with the longevity of the coffee, meaning they bring that acidity and can help the overall quality. So when I do fermentations, I'm much more relaxed on the amount of green, underripe, lower ripe cherries. Still, you can't do green. The green, if you can't pulp it, if it's so green that it's so hard that you can't pulp it, then we can't help that coffee. So my kind of advice is like, if you can pulp it, if it's soft enough to pulp, I'll take it, because I'll homogenize it with my commercial microbes, with my yeast and bacteria in the fermentation, and I will accept that acidity. So the other thing, this kind of leads to what we were talking about with ethylene, the gas that fruit naturally produce as they ripen. That's the trade-off, is ethylene will, what does it mean to be ripe? If ripe means soft, then yes, 100% ethylene gas will ripen your fruit, because it makes it soft enough to cut your avocados. It's soft enough, it makes your bananas soft and squishy. But exactly like Pranoy mentioned, it's not physiologically ripening. It's not converting those carbons that are acid to the carbons that are sugar. So you're not getting physiological ripeness, you're getting visual ripeness, meaning you're getting softness, but you're not getting that flavor development. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. You're like, well, what is that really good for? Because the other thing that ethylene gas does is it will change the color. I'm pretty sure it will take, cherries that are on the border and make them look red, and it will make them soft, but it won't make them have any more sugar. I can't do that. So it could be a little bit disappointing unless you're doing it for pulping. And if, like I said, it's kind of right on the edge and it's cherries that wouldn't pulp, and you use the ethylene gas to make them soft enough to pulp, then you can recapture those in your wash process and use them kind of in your fermentation. So I think ethylene gas could go either way, or not either way. I think it could be really helpful if you just have your eyes open on what you're using it for. Like, it's not going to make it riper because it can't, but it'll make it softer so you can pulp it and use that fruit. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I think, Pranoy, as you use it, you can report back on how it works for you, or maybe other uses that you find for it. I think it's a really good natural tool that we should be using. And I'm pretty sure Brazil uses it a lot for their really green cherries. Like, they'll take the super hard green cherries that you can't pulp and use ethylene gas, get them colored and ripened, and it's sold at a different quality, because again, it's still green. It never had that development of flavor, but it can be used for something else. Okay, I'm gonna go, Paolo, I hope that answered your question as well about where I recommend underripe. So again, that's why I like wash process, because it kind of lets you get away with more. I think that's a negative way to look at it. It just lets you do more. You have more wiggle room. So the naturals are very unforgiving. I definitely recommend your naturals, you have them as uniform, as visually uniform as you can. The color is a good clue as to how you can get clean naturals and consistent naturals as well. I'm gonna look at Micah's comment on the chat. It says, I just finished my harvest season. Congrats. I analyzed the data and got 5 unique batches with 70 days of drying. Wow. The cupping score is okay. It's super sweet, fruity, and there are no fermented notes on it. Has anyone had the same experience? All right, please come on and tell us more about 70 days of drying. How did you do that? Where did you do that? What were the conditions? Was it in a closed space? What do you mean?
70 total days of drying?
We just need more information.
Yeah.
We want to know. Yeah, if you can tell us more about about this coffee. Okay, he's typing. 70 days of drying. Well, while we wait for the answer in the chat, I'm just gonna bug Lowell and ask if you've started, because we're early. Pernod is early. What's going on in Honduras? Is that also an earlier season? And I know Colombia's kind of all over the place. Colombia has coffee most of the time.
We haven't started yet. I think Honduras has started, but because I think of our elevation, we just really don't start till January.
January, okay. But even this year, it doesn't seem to be any earlier than previous years?
Not where I'm at, and I haven't. Like later today, I have to drive across Honduras, so we'll see who's drying coffee on the side of the highway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that's usually where that junk coffee gets dried.
Yeah.
Is on the side of, and so that, you know, because of low elevation, that tends to be the first coffee. So I think I think a lot of places in November or in Honduras start in November.
Okay, but it's not out of the ordinary.
Yeah. And I would be surprised if it was early, because with so much rain, I would think that would have slowed things down.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much rain in October. So, and then it's just a question of, you know, was the ripening more condensed, or is it going to be, you know, kind of over a long period of time? Mm-hmm. But I also think with the C market breaking $4, I would be tearing my trees out of the ground and selling the rocks if I could.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because I mean, I would just strip pick and sell as fast as I could with the C where it is right now.
Yeah.
And so there could be that could influence people starting sooner than later.
Yeah, that's a good point. Trying to catch that, which goes back to another point about this tension with specialty having the reputation of like low, slow drying, low temperature, kind of long drying. And for me, what I recommend to most producers is like dry as fast as you can safely. So again, we're still going to keep in mind these peak temperatures so you're not damaging the coffee. But if you can dry it faster, it gives you more flexibility. The longer you wait, like you're more open to the volatility of all kinds of market conditions. So if you can be ready with that coffee in your warehouse ready to move out, I think that's a bonus. So I recommend getting the coffee off the patio, getting it off the beds.
Yeah, and we've had kind of the same weather you were talking about, where the last 10 days just kind of stopped raining. But last night it rained here. I don't know if it's, again, because I think we're kind of high and near the El Salvador border. We might have a microclimate that's different than other parts of Honduras, but I would say, just rain and rain and rain, and then one day it stopped, and that was about 10 days ago, which is usually you want it to rain until at least the middle of November.
Yeah. So
that when the coffee, because there's coffee still on the trees in March, April, and if the soil doesn't have any moisture, the coffee tree has a really hard time ripening that, bringing that coffee to maturity. And so a lot of times by April, it's so dry that people are just picking the green cherry. Because it's going to rain. It's going to rain a little bit and flower, and so they want all the cherry off of the trees before it starts raining again. And it's just highly unlikely that coffee is going to ripen unless there's more moisture in the soil.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky balance as well. So we'll keep the group updated on what that means, because I'm really unsure what this weather is going to mean for our harvest, if it's going to be as condensed as kind of the guess is that it's going to be more condensed, but the weather is just really, really funky. I just want to go back to, we have a little more information in the chat from Micah about the 70 days of drying. So he said, it's a natural process. I dried it in a greenhouse. We had bad rainy season here. The moisture drops slowly, but in a stable way. I don't really understand why it happened because it's a single layer. So, and then what else? We had 2 weeks in a row of rain. We don't have mechanical drying. I think that, I mean, the good news is, like you said, the cupping score is okay. It's really sweet and fruity. You didn't have any defective notes. So, you know, having that thin layer, I think really helped to not have that accumulated moisture build up into something else. I think that was a really good, the fact that you were able to do a thin layer for so long, you know, 2+ months, that you had the space, I think is also really lucky. And I think that there's not really, I guess I'm a little confused about the question. I don't think you had a problem. I think that like, I think you did good processing. I think you had potentially, you started with material that wasn't overripe, that wasn't, you know, prone to spoilage. So it sounds like you made a good harvesting decision. It sounds like you did really good selection. The fact that you kept it a thin layer and probably had good air circulation. So even though you had high moisture, it didn't, it didn't negatively affect the quality of the coffee. Sounds like all positive things to me. Again, it'd be great if probably you could dry it in less time, and free up that space. So he said it has good air circulation. There's no mold on the cherry surfaces. I panic when I realize how long it takes to dry those patches. So yeah, it does sound alarming. It does sound like a long time, but I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. You tasted it and it doesn't have those flavors. So, you know, I'm sure you were panicking the whole time until you were able to taste it. But I don't think that that's going to have any negative repercussions long term for spoilage or for the longevity of the coffee. So now that you've tasted it and it tastes good, I think that's a good indicator also for kind of the coffee moving forward. There's a discussion. The question was it in a closed greenhouse? And yeah, I think that also definitely helped. Oh, okay. So when you had a lot of rain, so having the closed greenhouse helped keep the outside moisture from coming in and increasing the humidity. But also if it's closed and you don't have a way of getting the inside moisture out, then you could be containing the moisture longer than necessary. So Micah says we open the greenhouse every 1 hour to bring outer air to push out the humidity. So that's great that you do have ventilation, that you're able to close it completely and able to open it. But what would be helpful would be an extractor, not just opening the house, but if you have a way to have a fan kind of pulling that air out, I think could be a little bit more efficient. So that could be an investment. If they left the cherry, so Lowell's saying if they left the coffee out in thin layers and it was rehydrating, then there will be shelf life issues. Yes. But we don't know that happened. I'm trying to think. Good to see you, Prannoy. Thanks for joining. Oh, yeah. Guys, it's almost been an hour. This has been so fun. Let's think about Lowell's question real quick about the longevity, where if the coffee was losing moisture, rehydrating, and it was kind of going back and forth. Yes, I think that action would have consequences for longevity, but just because it was slow, I'm not sure we can say that definitely happened. I think it is possible that could happen. Dylan's asking if you measured the humidity in the greenhouse. Great question. Having monitors gives you good information on what's going on. So again, this is good things to keep in mind. Yuyutsu in Nepal, to be able to have these numbers, so that when we can dissect, your season later. Awesome. I'm going to let this conversation continue in the chat if you guys like. Okay, humidity around 55 to 85%. If it hits 75, I open the door and try to circulate the humidity. Again, great. I just think it could help you to have the added, if you have electricity, have the added boost of a fan to push the air out or an extractor fan in your greenhouse.
But always, like, have it running.
Good.
If you have the extractor fan set up, keep it running, because like you're going to keep increasing humidity in the room if you keep it closed as the coffee is drying. So it's going to keep releasing humidity into the air, and then you'll get stuck.
Yeah, so having the fan kind of running that continuously can help kind of draw that out and make more of that consistent environment instead of having this kind of like start stop kind of build up and then go down and then build up and then go down.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get stuck.
Yeah, if your relative humidity doesn't go below 55%, then if your air is that moist, it's really hard to get your coffee to be below 12% moisture.
Yeah, we had this happen to us in Colombia. We did a workshop. We had to dry the coffee back at our house at 2,000 meters, so in the clouds. And it took 48 days to dry washed coffee on raised beds.
Yeah, wash, not even natural.
It just would not finish. But in the end, it ended up having a good like year and a half shelf life. We were able to sell it like a year later.
That's right. So yeah, the coffee did have, the shelf life wasn't affected by the long drying period because something, and I actually show this as an example in FTC, in our fermentation training camp, because I could assure that the coffee wasn't regaining moisture and then losing it because I was taking the weight of the coffee. So my weight wasn't going up, meaning that it wasn't gaining more water. The coffee wasn't getting heavier. So I did go out of my way to make sure that my coffee was just stuck. It wasn't going backwards and then drying and going backwards and drying. It was just kind of stuck and not moving forward. So that definitely helped the shelf life of a year and a half later of the stability of this coffee. Guys, it was so good to hang out with you. I'm sorry to cut the chat short. If you guys want to keep chatting, please keep chatting. This is what this is helpful for. And again, it's also awesome to share pictures. So maybe Micah, you can share pictures of your greenhouse and maybe we can give you some feedback on where to place your fans, if that's even an option, or kind of improvements like that. Yeah, good to see everybody. Thanks for hanging out and I'll see you in a couple weeks.